Hey everybody, this is Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin. We had so many new show submissions for the contest, we've opted to create a page where you can listen to all of them at your own pace. Visit letstalkbitcoin.com/contest to peruse the entire set, and feel free to vote for more than one. We'll be selecting multiple shows to join the network in Q1. Enjoy the show, and remember to vote at letstalkbitcoin.com/contest.
Hello out there, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of CoinTalk, the cryptocurrency show. We're proudly sponsored by the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada, and if you want to find out more information about them, you can check out bitcoinalliance.ca. And I also want to give a shout out to the guys at CryptoKit. CryptoKit is a Chrome extension that runs a client-side wallet. From this wallet, you can pluck addresses out of pages and pay instantly to those vendors. There's also a GPG messaging platform that's built into the system, and a news aggregation service that gives you the up-to-date news on Bitcoin from around the world. For more information, check out CryptoKit.com. So today's episode is kind of special because it's a hybrid episode. You see, we're also playing this episode to participate in the Let's Talk Bitcoin pilot contest, and we want to thank all the new viewers who are checking us out and listening to this for the first time. Today on the show, we've got Andreas Antonopoulos, a technologist, public speaker, and writer, and somebody you'll recognize from Let's Talk Bitcoin. And then we're going to be following up with Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin, and Stephanie Murphy, the co-host of Let's Talk Bitcoin. So today's kind of a podcast-centric episode. And speaking of podcasts, I want to remind everybody that if you're listening to this and you've been introduced only to the audio, we are a video show as well, and you can find us on YouTube. I also want to let everyone know that if you're in and around the Toronto area, we want to see you at the launch of Bitcoin Decentral this Wednesday, January 1st. We're going to be kicking off the new year, celebrating Bitcoin, and getting together to mingle in our new building. Consider this your invite. Spread the word. The address is 64 Spadina Avenue. You'll see the sign. You can't miss it. Or for more information, check out meetup.com/Bitcoin-Toronto. I want to take a second to thank all the fans who have been tuning in from all over the world. We've been getting a lot of wonderful comments. Everybody seems to be enjoying what we're doing, and they're giving us proactive comments on how to fix things. Thank you. Tell your friends. We're trying to get the word Bitcoin out there, and we're trying to do it in a proactive, positive way. But that's it for today, so we're going to get right to it. This one is a longer episode than usual, and there's still 2 more to come, so stay tuned, and at the end of this episode, I'll let you know who's going to be coming up on the next. Without further ado, enjoy the show. So I'm here with the infamous Andreas Antonopoulos. This is actually kind of a pivotal moment for me. I had the pleasure of meeting you last night, and I feel like you were kind of my guiding light when I first got involved with Bitcoin. I've seen your Jefferson dinner party video probably 10 times now. So it's very exciting to have you on the show. I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And welcome to CoinTalk.
Oh, thank you for your kind words and your support. I'm just reflecting the community, which is an incredibly inspirational, principled, and ideological community. Behind the surface, there's so much more going on in Bitcoin, and it's a privilege to be able to talk to all of the people involved in Bitcoin and be inspired on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. So you've got quite the legacy when it comes to security, and you've been involved in security for a number of years. I'm curious, when you first heard about Bitcoin, what were your thoughts, or how did you decide that this was something that you needed to be involved with? And I'm curious how that all took place.
When I first heard about Bitcoin, I ignored it because I thought it was a currency, and I missed the point. In fact, at the time, I was still getting out of the security business. I had spent more than 15 years in information security and distributed systems, and unfortunately, I had seen my client base shrink to be primarily intelligence agencies, defense corporations, and banks, or as I like to think of it, torturers, murderers, and thieves. And for me, that was a pivotal moment because I could not live with myself helping people who had no social consciousness and who were actively doing evil on a daily basis not because they wanted to, but because they just went along with the system, and I couldn't go along with the system. So I spent a couple of years really trying to figure out what to do next, and then I came across the Satoshi paper, which, if you haven't read, is just an incredible piece of work. It's a 9-page scientific paper, one of the best scientific papers I've ever read, and it concisely explains Bitcoin, the protocol, the network, the system, the platform, which is so much more than just the currency. Currency is just the first step. And it immediately captured my imagination. In fact, it put me into an obsessive state where I spent the next 4 to 6 months barely sleeping, barely eating, just consuming as much information as I could about Bitcoin, because it represented to me the perfect alignment of my skills and passions and my core principles. So that's the basis under which I work in Bitcoin, and so every day working in Bitcoin is a blessing, and it's just changed my life completely.
I feel the same. In fact, the way that I kind of look at it is we had our first real gift as a global culture, and it was the internet. And I feel almost like cryptocurrency as a whole will be the second.
Yes.
I think the implications are huge. And to quote you, if I will, I think that a technocratic scientific currency is just an absolute must moving forward. So I'm curious, you've made a slogan out of the other 6.5 billion.
Yes.
Where do you see the new hotspots for Bitcoin in the near future?
So the hotspots are in areas where they understand the need for Bitcoin. From my perspective, speaking about Bitcoin in North America and Western Europe, you first have to explain why, and then you have to explain how. And when you go to the developing world, in places like Argentina, in places like Greece, in places like Cyprus, they already know why. You don't even need to explain it. What they want to know is how and now. There's this palpable sense of need and this incredible untapped potential. And also there's this level of corruption and systemic oppression around the world that as Americans, as privileged individuals on this planet, we can't see. We're blind to it. And so I've been privileged enough to be exposed to that, and it really is a completely different environment. I think the hotspots are going to be in Southeast Asia and Latin America, as well as Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And for that purpose, I'm focusing all of 2014 in visiting those areas and doing as much in terms of conferences and meeting the local community in those areas as possible. It's in the absolute darkness where the light shines brightest, and that could not be more true for Bitcoin. And if you're the city of lights on the hill like we are here in the States, it's hard to see that light, but trust me, they see it in Argentina and they see it in Athens. For them, Bitcoin is not a currency. For them, it's a powerful tool of liberation. For them, it's a tool with which they can free themselves from corrupt influences.
I want to ask about altcoins, because those are exciting, and there's a number of them that are speculative. Some of them are kind of pump and dump models.
Sure.
But what I'm interested in is kind of the cryptocurrency 2.0 coins that are kind of floating, that are offering new services. I'm curious as to maybe which coins you're following, or how you feel the ecosystem that surrounds Bitcoin, and I think Litecoin for that matter, as a runner-up, is going to evolve over time.
So I wrote an article about the ecosystem of altcoins and how they form a taxonomy. And altcoins are really coins that have a separate blockchain. I'm more interested at the moment in meta coins that can ride on top of the Bitcoin blockchain as additional protocol layers. And I think 2014 is the year where we see this explosion in the protocol layers above Bitcoin. So from my perspective, I think we underestimate consistently the network effect of the Bitcoin blockchain. We're talking about 5 petahashes of security applied to a globally distributed network with a sunk capital cost in silicon ASICs and also in invested capital, which is a tremendous network effect, one that will not be easily unseated or replaced by an altcoin. And really at the moment, I don't think any of the altcoins are offering anything near enough compelling to unseat Bitcoin. However, the altcoins play a very important role. They offer us an ecological laboratory, an evolutionary laboratory where we can study the effects of currencies on a smaller scale. On the one hand, each altcoin itself, through its name, conveys a purpose, introduces a feature, and then market tests it on a small scale. And then occasionally, some of these altcoins blow up in spectacular fashion, demonstrating very interesting failure modes that we can learn from in Bitcoin. I think many of the features that we see in altcoin will be co-opted by Bitcoin, the ones that are most powerful and most successful. And more importantly, we're going to see the emergence of metacoins, coins that can introduce new features and capabilities while riding on the network effect and the established security mechanism of the Bitcoin blockchain. And this will truly start showing the power of Bitcoin as a platform, not as a currency, and why currency is just the first app. And there will be many new ones in 2014. So I'm very interested in those. I also think we're on the dawn of a new era of meta politics. So Bitcoin establishes a way to disintermediate central banking by replacing it with an algorithm. And this idea of a predictable, algorithmically guaranteed central bank is very powerful. But there are so many other aspects of governance that can be addressed in a similar fashion that we haven't thought of yet. So there are a couple of coins that are playing around with ideas such as redistribution of income and demurrage, negative interest rate, that actually switch the focus from hoarding to consumption or the other way around, or allow for a more equitable distribution of income as an algorithmic function within the coin. Now, those are features that Bitcoin can't co-opt because Bitcoin has a certain neutral and relatively libertarian point of view, mostly neutral. But there are coins that have a non-neutral political point of view, and I think there will be a place for those too. And those features, because they're in direct contradiction with the underlying functions of Bitcoin, can't be co-opted. So therefore, they will stand on their own. They will offer compelling reasons for a certain number of people around the world to adopt them. In the next few years, I think a future with zero cryptocurrencies is entirely unlikely. A future with just one cryptocurrency with the entire market share is equally unlikely. What I expect to see is Bitcoin gradually reducing its market share to a level perhaps around 75%, and then a series of other cryptocurrencies and algorithmic currencies that implement different meta politics, creating a parallel distribution. So maybe 3 or 4 of them have the next 15, 20%, and then another 10 or 20 have the next 5% of market share. And they will fill all of the ecological niches of global politics and different needs and different capabilities that need to be expressed in an algorithmic currency. So I'm very excited for the future. I think the idea of a marketplace for ideas and innovation around currency and financialization and financial instruments is extremely powerful, because all of these can take advantage of the basic gift that Satoshi Nakamoto gave us, which is the decentralized asset ledger. And that is such a powerful concept. It's such a powerful invention. It doesn't even need to have Bitcoin the currency succeed, because as an invention it can't be uninvented, and so it's unstoppable. Algorithmic currencies have happened, and the implications are going to play out over decades or even perhaps centuries. And we haven't even yet begun to fathom the depths of that ripple and what it's going to do to our world. So as you said, Internet was the first step, and algorithmic currencies are the second step. So we've received this gift, and none of us know where this is going to go. We're literally on the front lines of history, watching it play out. We don't have the tools to understand it, we don't have the tools to analyze it, and we don't yet know what the future will bring. But boy, is it going to be exciting.
I agree. Let me ask you this. Because of the nature of Bitcoin co-opting features or evolving with its niche, and because Bitcoin cryptocurrencies are so fungible, is it more likely that people would switch to a currency with new features than being able to achieve consensus on new features to implement?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think the network effect of Bitcoin and the stickiness of the branding and the capital investment that's gone into it the specificity of the hashing algorithm and the invested silicon in it, they create the conditions where what started off as a beta test, as a grand experiment, is going to go into production with all its flaws and is going to be extremely successful. I think we had many of the same discussions in the early internet where people said TCP/IP is not flexible enough, cannot support real-time protocols, cannot support voice or video. And in the end, the open innovation environment and the flexibility of that protocol ended up absorbing all other attempts and became the global standard, so much so that it can't even move to the next version. We can't even go to IPv6 because IPv4 is so sticky and has been embedded in so many areas. I think the same is going to happen. Bitcoin is good enough, and good enough in this environment compared to all of the other currencies is going to blow the world away.
Cool. So what are some of the challenges that you see, some of the real challenges in the near to short term that are actually potential threats? There's a lot of talk about the regulatory bodies becoming involved. My stance is that I like to look at Bitcoin like it's a freight train, and it's kind of on a runaway path for success or otherwise. But what are the real threats, you think, that we have to deal with in the short term?
I think all of the threats in the future of Bitcoin are internal at this point. The external threats are pretty much done. The battle hasn't started, and it's already won. In terms of regulation and backlash by governments and banks, I really think we're going to see some futile attempts to contain, distract, and delay. But in the end, the power that's been unleashed from Bitcoin is already global. And it's already captured the imagination of probably millions of people at this point, and that's enough. That makes it absolutely unstoppable from external influences. Really, the only way we can mess up Bitcoin is from the inside out. So a fundamental flaw in the underlying key management or encryption systems that goes unnoticed for a very long time could seriously damage Bitcoin, the currency, and derail its success. Other than that, I think there are very few failure scenarios right now. Really, it's up to the stewardship of the core developer community. They hold within their hands the possibility of messing it up big time, but at the same time, they've proven to be very pragmatic and conservative, and because of the consensus mechanism, they're restrained from doing dramatic things. I would like to see Bitcoin, the protocol, stabilize, make a few basic fixes that address some of the issues that might occur in the future, like blockchain data size and bandwidth use, some minor refinements to the protocol, and then just leave it alone and let the innovation move to the layers above. And learn from the lesson of TCP/IP. We got it to a level that was good enough, and then we stopped messing with it. I think the same thing needs to happen to Bitcoin. And unfortunately, what we're seeing among the core developers is they understand this, and they've been very pragmatic about their approach. So I'm very hopeful, and I think right now Bitcoin is entirely unstoppable.
Let's change pace for a second. I want to talk about your paper wallet systems, and I want to move to the consumer or the early majority to the mid-majority. How do you feel that moving to a digital cryptocurrency is going to affect their lack of something tangible? And how does that play into the paper wallet system that you've created?
I think, well, first of all, let me clarify that I didn't create the paper wallet system. However, I have built a version where I've tried to do some product development and refinement. It's an open source system called Open Paper Wallet, which you can find on GitHub. And I sell a little kit to familiarize people at safepaperwallet.com. Honestly, you don't need to buy the kit. Just download the software and use it. So the underlying thing here is that as a species, we've had 4.5 million years of experience with physical security that goes back to the time the first caveman hid a squirrel under a rock so the other caveman wouldn't eat it. But really it goes back 500 million years because the squirrel itself was hiding nuts before that. We have all of this experience. Physicality actually is a very important security feature, and being able to do physical security is ingrained in our culture at a level that's very deep. We have less than 50 years of experience with information security, and frankly, we suck at it. So the idea of taking money, digitally encoding it, and putting it on general purpose operating systems is one that will run into problems. Over the next year, I think we need to work very hard on dealing with the security implications. My approach with paper wallets is by converting the key management system to a physical token. Then you can apply the 4.5 million years of physical security experience with locks and keys and safes and hidden stuff, right? So the basic aspects of physical security can be applied to this new digital medium, and people understand that intuitively. But overall, we're going to need to do a better job. One of the core issues we have right now is that there's very little collaboration between the different security teams that are applying operational security on the ground every day in these new Bitcoin startups, whether they be exchanges or wallets or new innovative models and companies. What I hope to see is more collaboration in that space. So last week I announced that I was starting a Bitcoin CSO council. And this is something that's been done in other industries for many years. The heads of pharmaceutical industry, the security heads, the security heads of the banking industry get together once a month on a teleconference, and they talk openly about what they're doing and what they're learning and what went wrong. And they started doing this because they were losing the war against hackers, because hackers collaborate, and for them information is currency, and they weren't collaborating. So we need to overcome this tendency to apply secrecy instinctively, and instead thinking more about how we can collaborate. So I've invited any security professionals who are currently involved in operational security on the ground in the front lines to join me in doing a regular discussion under strict confidence where we can, openly talk about the lessons learned and develop common best practices. We don't need to solve these problems individually. They're the same problems, and we can learn so much more. None of us know the answers, and individually it's very hard to come up with the right answers. But together we can do so much more. And I hope from that we can issue some best practices and some common standards that will help advance security in this industry, because otherwise it's going to get ugly over the next year. These thefts are going to get bigger and bigger, and the negative publicity that comes from those is going to delay our ability to create mass adoption of Bitcoin, the platform, and Bitcoin, the currency.
How do you feel about the current state of being able to remain anonymous? Is that going to be the first casualty in this digital currency revolution? In other words, how important are the Know Your Client regulations, and is that something that is worth fighting for? Will we win that battle? How do you feel?
I believe in radical, ubiquitous anonymity for the currency. I think one of the most important things we can do is maintain the independence, decentralized nature, and fungibility of the currency by resisting attempts to blacklist, filter, or tie identities to the individual transactions. These attempts are well-meaning, but unfortunately misguided. At the end of the day, they won't prevent theft. What they will do is they will introduce counterparty risk and controls that can be abused by corrupt governments and essentially lead to more oppression. Regulations have never saved us from fraud. The biggest fraud in the history of mankind was created in a fully regulated environment, and nobody went to jail. And it wasn't Bitcoin, I can tell you that for sure. Mm-hmm. So when regulators come and tell us that they can save us from Bitcoin by making Bitcoin better, I say go down to Wall Street and do your job, because you failed to do your job there, and that's where the problem is. We don't need regulations at the moment, and regulations are not going to improve Bitcoin, the protocol. What we need is architecture. We need security controls within the system, and those are going to allow us to fully realize the potential for Bitcoin. At the end of the day, regulations get corrupted, and the end result is that HSBC can money launder to their heart's content and never get punished. They can fund terrorism across the world, as all of the big banks do, and their money is never blocked. But you try sending money to Greenpeace, you try sending money to animal activists, you try sending money to WikiLeaks, you try operating as a dissident in an oppressive government and try to fund your operations, and suddenly the regulators wake up. So I don't believe in applying controls that way. I think in the end, those are not productive, and they do not protect consumers and end users. So I would much rather see individuals being empowered to make their own choices about how they spend their money without the interference of government.
On an individual level, for people who are either just coming to the movement or who are not holding yet but want to get involved, what are the areas of interest that you would say in the next coming months should be followed or at least looked at?
Well, I want to change that a bit and really focus on the individual. One of the things that I see is the possibility of developing expertise and skills that will generate a future stream of income for people for the next 20 years. You can build your career on cryptocurrencies right now, and one thing I can guarantee is that if Bitcoin goes away, other cryptocurrencies will fill that vacuum. Cryptocurrencies are not going anywhere. So these skills are highly transferable between the various domains. Understanding algorithmic money, understanding the platforms that allow transfer of value across a network, those skills will generate for you a job, a career, and a future. So there's tremendous potential at the moment for people to get involved, start to learn, and be among the few early adopters who have strong and deep expertise in this space, and that's going to be well worth doing.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you again, Andreas. It was great. How do people get in touch with you?
So I'm on Twitter, AANTONOP, Antonop. And probably that's one of the easiest ways to reach me. Also, you can find my contact details at root11.com, ROOTELEVEN.com. And so contact me there, and I look forward to hearing from everyone in the Bitcoin community.
Awesome. Well, it was an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's always great.
Cheers.
Thank you.
CoinTalk is free, uncensored, and independent. Just like cryptocurrencies, it's powered by its audience. If you like what you hear, feel free to send us a tip. It really makes a difference in helping us keep CoinTalk alive. Find the QR code on your screen now, or if you're listening to audio only, check us out at cointalk.ca. Now we're going to talk to Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin.
So I'm here with Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoins, and I got to say, this is actually my first conference, and this is kind of like, I don't want to say like a make it or break it moment, but I feel honored to have you on the show because, in fact, you were the one who kind of got me into Bitcoin. I found the podcast, I've been listening ever since, and I want to say thank you because I think that you're providing a service that's important. And there's not a lot of people out there doing it, and so I'm trying to become a part of that movement as well.
Well, that's really kind of what I'm trying to. I love that. That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that that the show that we've done has been able to bring so many people into Bitcoin, because that's been crazy. I've been doing shows since like 2005. And I've never seen anything like Bitcoin. And again, like I'm an opportunistic guy. That's why I started the podcast when I did, because I saw the hole. But man, I mean, this has been a crazy year.
Yeah.
It's not even been a year. We started the show that I do in April.
Wow. How's the following? I mean, it seems like everywhere I go with you, people are saying, oh, I love the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, to a certain extent, we're in rarefied air here, at a Bitcoin conference, because you have the people who are most passionate about it and have resources to be able to do it, which is really kind of the audience that we've targeted, is people who wanted to educate themselves and were looking for a way to do it. What was the actual question?
Oh, no. I was just kind of saying thank you for Let's Talk Bitcoin, essentially.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And so to that point, I'm really happy that you're starting to do a show about Bitcoin, too, because, again, it's been pretty lonely out there. Mm-hmm. We've when I started up Let's Talk Bitcoin, there was really nothing out, and then a couple of shows jumped up afterwards, and then they kind of went away in September, because it's hard to do this from a speculative fashion, and the audience has been small. When we started, our first show actually, we jumped right up to about 3,000 or 5,000 listeners with our first couple of shows. And then it kind of just sat there for like a long time, and we put out a bunch of shows. We do a twice weekly show, so we went through a lot of content, and it really seemed like it was less about what I was doing, and more just about that it was above a minimum level of quality. And then beyond that, our progress and our audience growth has pretty much been attached to Bitcoin. There's been word of mouth within the Bitcoin community, but the Bitcoin community that actually exists on Reddit and the forums is not that large, and a lot of them don't really get into media content. They like written things. Mm-hmm. So I think that now, in the last month, we've seen our numbers go up from where they were 2 months ago, maybe by 4 times.
Oh, wow.
So it's been huge. And and so I attribute that partly to me for sticking around and for doing a show at the level that we've been able to do it. But really, this is about Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, I agree. So for the folks that are at home trying to get any Vegas insight, let's talk about the conference for a moment.
Yeah.
This being my first conference, I'm really impressed with the turnout. I mean, we've had, I think, over 1,000 people now. The auditorium has been packed. The energy is high. I almost feel like there's a tipping point here, or at least for me, there's a tipping point. It seems like the momentum is here.
Yeah, I feel like each one of these conferences is a tipping point, to be honest with you, and even ones that we don't go to, because it really, again, like Bitcoin isn't this monolithic thing, cryptocurrency isn't this monolithic thing, so the people who are coming to these events are self-selecting to educate themselves, and then when they come here, and really more often than not, when they show up at these things, they're like, is this real? Is this worth my time? And then they see everybody here who's saying exactly the same thing to themselves, and everybody's qualified, and everybody has great ideas, and everybody has projects that they want to work on. And so, I mean, like, that's the thing, is that every time one of these events happen, regardless of where it is, the people who are new to the event pick up the contagion from the people who are there. I mean, like, this is a viral process we have going on. It's sort of funny to see too, because in the next year, we're going to see at least 2 or 3 conferences per month.
Yeah.
And that's up exponentially from 2 years ago, and it's going to be 2 or 3 times what we saw this year.
Mm-hmm. What I like the most is the idea that the people are pushing this. And Bitcoin and altcoins and cryptocurrencies are really, in my opinion, a currency for the people. And so to see the people taking the initiative and taking the lead is actually really, it's actually heartwarming, and it gives me a sense of excitement for things to come.
Yeah, to be honest, it had to be this way. The situation that we find ourselves in is really the only type of pressure cooker that you could make something like cryptocurrency actually appeal to. Because we have problems in our world that aren't being solved, and the reason they're not being solved is because they're not allowed to be solved. It's not that we can't solve them, it's just that it's not allowed to.
Yeah.
So that makes things like Bitcoin that you simply can't stop very, very powerful. And it means that in the long term, this is basically a binary proposition, as people like to say. It either goes really high, and again, the binary proposition people like to talk about is the price, but the price has implications, right? If we find ourselves at $100,000 or $1 million per Bitcoin or something like that, then the world will have changed, and we will be living in a fundamentally different world than the one that we're in now. You said that you like that the people are pushing this. I think the most interesting part about these conferences, like I said, is the people who, people like me come and we talk at these things, and the idea that I try to do is I try to get new ideas out there and seed things in people's minds. But the people who are really interesting at these things, more often than not, are the people who are attending, because they have projects that they'd like to start, and more often than not, those are the forward-looking ones, because the people who are doing stuff now, they've been working on it for 2 years. So like companies like BitPay or BitInstant or any of these other things, they're basically legacy companies in the space, and it's funny to think about it like that, but they're the giant behemoths who are kind of centralized, and so eventually they're going to get their lunch eaten too.
Who are you excited to see in the show, or what surprised you?
Greg Schwey from the Genesis blog gave a fantastic talk about data analysis on the blockchain and did a case study of ASIC miner, basically going through So in 2014, we're going to see a lot of crypto equities. But to this point, there have been equities for Bitcoin companies that have been issued in Bitcoin, but they have been on centralized exchanges. So the downside of this is that if the exchange goes away, then all of the shares that it held go away too, because it wasn't really anything other than entries in their database. So with that in mind, what Greg was talking about was this idea that you can essentially take publicly available anonymized data from releases or from publicly issued addresses or whatever, because like in this case, ASIC miner shows all the addresses that they pay out to for transparency's sake. And so using this data over time, they were able to identify the largest holders, they were able to identify the exchanges, they were able to identify when the largest holders were selling and when the exchanges were buying. And so, this type of information is totally three-dimensional, right? It's hard to wrap your head around it when all you've got is two-dimensional tools, but we're moving towards a future where that's not true. And in fact, this will be both powerful and also anonymized. That's the other thing about it, is that we can have all the advantages of learning how people behave in certain situations without having to know who they are. And that also is very important.
Now, in terms of remaining anonymous, I feel like that might be the first to go from the government regulatory perspective. How do you feel about that? With cryptocurrencies, we have the ability to be anonymous, but is that something that's going to be core and central? Are the people going to hold on to that and really make that important as part of the technology? Or do you think that if we're going to be using cryptocurrencies as a compromise in this world will have to reduce the amount of anonymity and follow like know your client kind of perspectives.
It really just depends on who you're talking to about this. I fall on more the idealist side of the equation when it comes to this. I do think anonymity is important, and I think that it's not anonymity. That's the other thing is that really what you're doing is you're having pseudonymous relationships, and the people who you're doing business with, generally speaking, they know who you are. It's not like you're sending money off into the ether of somebody you've never heard of. You're probably spending money with a business. The question is, should that be publicly available to anyone besides the two parties who are involved? And with a bank or something like that, with any sort of traditional payment mechanism besides cash, they need to be because they are doing the facilitation. And so that's how we built our laws around. So that's really the situation we find ourselves in, is that ideally, anonymity or pseudonymity is one of the most important features about cryptocurrency, but there are futures ahead of us where it might not be in this particular version of cryptocurrency.
For me, I'm always worried that too much publicity too early can actually be a bad thing. One of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about the Senate hearing that took place a few months ago was that just before the Senate hearing, it was already above $1,000. And I think that kind of made it more serious for the people who were looking at it in the Senate. Had it still been $200, maybe they kind of would have brushed it off, and that might have actually allowed us to move a little bit quicker, move under the radar still. I'm wondering, is the publicity good, or is it too much too fast? Are we a runaway freight train?
The publicity is inevitable. This is the world that we live in. We chase momentum. And so anything that gains momentum, regardless of what it is going to get talked about, simply because you can't not in an environment like that.
I hear you. I agree. I'm just worried that with the new buzz, there's going to be a lot of people who are now looking at it that may have something to throw against it.
It just depends on if you have people have always thrown this against it. When the price crashes, and again, the price has gone from $200 down to $60 before. So, that would be the equivalent of us going down to like $200 right now. So we haven't gotten close to that. 583, I think, is the lowest we got. But at the end of the day, the price doesn't matter. The price is totally irrelevant, and that's what I think people learn as they continue through this process, is that, you hear people who have a lot of Bitcoin saying that the price doesn't matter. I don't have a lot of Bitcoin, but the price doesn't matter because Bitcoin still is fundamentally as useful if it's 1 cent each as it is, at $1 million each. So, I don't know how it's going to work out, but to a certain extent, I think that this is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and,
let the chips fall where they may, essentially.
Again, people who, if you can look at cryptocurrency with a long-term perspective, and by long-term, I don't mean like 10 years, I mean like 6 months to a year, then I think that the risk that you face reduces a lot. You have fail risk, and it's binary risk, but you don't have like, okay, I bought, and I don't know if this is a good price. Because, again, if we continue along this course, then the price has to go up. There's no way around it. So, is Bitcoin going to stop being useful to the world? I don't think so. Is Bitcoin, our government's going to fix what they're doing with other monies out there and make Bitcoin stop being so appealing because it isn't actually so much better? I don't think that's going to happen either. So,
they're kind of doing the work for us.
Yeah, seriously, we're locked in here, and to a certain extent, it really is all about all the things that we're not doing and all the things that we're just here. Nobody's talking about taking down the government. We're just talking about building a system that doesn't necessarily need them because they're not very good at that job.
Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges that you see in the short term? We're talking 3 to 6 months that are kind of. I still feel like we haven't exactly taken off, to use like a metaphor for a plane. What are some of the issues that we need to face before we get out to mass market appeal and mass acceptance?
It's all just usability. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it is. You mentioned Armory Wallet. I use Armory Wallet. It takes about an hour to load each time that you start it. And, it's powerful. It has a lot of features, but it started off as an open source project. And the reason why it takes an hour to load is because it's still using that same mechanism. They're designing, they've got a version out that only has to do that once, and then it takes, a couple seconds to load because it has it in memory. Or I don't know exactly how they're storing it, but it takes a couple seconds to load. But these are processes that take time, and they went from being an unfunded open source project to being a funded, I think, by all Bitcoin VC. I think they raised about $600,000 to hire developers. And again, they have no model. There's no business model here. It's just that this is a free thing. Somebody totally needs to do this, and they're looking at their monetization, I suspect, from their corporate clients, and from being able to provide a level of consulting or service or something like that about that. The problems need to be solved. There are very much problems. One of the other ones is wallet software. Actually, I guess that is Armory. But I mean, usable wallet software. There's a difference between super secure and super usable, and we haven't really found a good solution to that yet. And I think a lot of it is because wallets are free. It's very, very difficult to come into that scene where everything is free and there are decent options out there and say, okay, and we're going to charge you for this.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Let's Talk Bitcoin. You actually have a podcast, Call to Action. I'm curious to hear a little bit more of that because we've got our own viewers that might be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reality is that we've done well over the last, since we started in April, and have built a decent brand, and it's got a lot of recognition within the community. And so what I have always wanted to do, again, was to develop the media scene and to have a media scene in cryptocurrency that actually was able to competently speak about the issue as opposed to just being able to regurgitate talking points. Because that's very, very difficult. I spend a lot of my time interfacing with traditional reporters, and again, it's like it's their job now to explain this thing to their audience, but they can't even explain it, to themselves. They don't even understand it. Like we talk about Napster. This is a common thing. And it's like if you talk about Napster, then it's kind of like Bitcoin because it did file sharing, it's P2P, all that stuff, but it's not really like Bitcoin because it's totally centralized. So if you tell people that, then they're like, oh, it's like Napster. And then you're like, no, that's what came before. Instead, it's more like BitTorrent, and they're like, well, our readers have no idea what BitTorrent is, we can't say that. So then they print the Napster thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's gotten better in the last couple of months. I really do feel like, I don't care about the price, but people care about the price. People who are new to Bitcoin care about the price. So what I view it as is an opportunity to pull in people and to, while they're interested in that, and to kind of flip the switch with them, right? So they're looking for information, and so you say, okay, here's the information that you need, and, and here's the right way to think about it. Because the right way to think about it is important, and if you just watch something on YouTube, chances are pretty good. I mean, there are some good options out there, but a lot of them are like, yeah, you should buy this because it's going up in price. And that's insane.
I agree. The money is a big incentive for those who are just hearing about it for the first time. And what I've found, especially in my case, is that once you get that little taste of Bitcoin and you find it interesting, you kind of fall down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I mean, so the advice that I have for people who are getting into it now is, again, this is what I'm telling my parents too, is figure out how much money you want to put in, dollar cost average on like a day of the week, moving forward, and do it over the course of like 3 months. And once you do that, just sit there. And even if it's a small amount of Bitcoin, just sit there, because 300 Bitcoin was a small amount of Bitcoin. That was what 300 Bitcoin was $3,000. $30,000 not too long ago, and now it's $300,000. So again, the fact that we've done this a couple of times now, where suddenly the price jumps up and then it might crash down, but eventually that becomes the new normal, and then from there, that's where we go up or down. That pretty much means that if you can hang around for 6 months, then you'll be pretty good.
Yeah, there seems to be, at least from my angle, a misconception. A lot of people think you can't buy into Bitcoin. They say, oh, the price is $1,000. I don't have $1,000 to invest, and they're under the guise that they need to have a Bitcoin.
Right.
But a lot of people now, I think, are starting to realize, oh, it's not about that. It's just about convert the currency that you have to the Bitcoin.
Right. No, yeah, I mean... Yeah, and not everything you have. That was a point that Alan Reiner made in his talk yesterday about, they run the most secure wallet at Armory. No question in my mind about that. And his stance was basically that normal users should not hold life-changing amounts of Bitcoins at all, regardless of if it's in his software or any other software, because it's simply not safe and there could be something wrong with it. So this is very true, and I think that if you're a true believer, you can still do that. You can still speculate, because there's, how do you not? But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of risk. Getting back to your point about the call for shows. Yeah, so basically what we're doing is, I can't talk about all the details yet, but we're going to be starting, moving into a network, the LTB network, that'll have cryptocurrency shows, and I'm aiming to have 5 shows by the end of Q1. That'll be at least weekly, and we're going to keep doing our show twice a week, and we're just going to continue to bring people on, because again, for me, it's all about trying to build this platform and trying to give people who are getting into the space and have interesting things to say or insightful things to say, a platform to be able to do that, instead of kind of what it is now, where like the only people who talk don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, the misinformation train.
Yeah.
So for those who are being introduced to you for the first time, or who haven't heard about Let's Talk Bitcoin, how do they get in touch, or how do they find the show?
So Let's Talk Bitcoin is a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects, and the philosophy, although I don't have that in the catchphrase, behind Bitcoin and kind of this new digital economy that we're seeing emerge. You can reach me at adam@letstalkbitcoin.com. I get back to emails pretty quickly, and I still, even with our increased listener base, I've been able to keep up with most emails. So if I've missed you in the last week, please email me back. But anyways, the point is that... and you can visit our show at www.letstalkbitcoin.com. We release new episodes on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming out. It's a pleasure, and we'll catch up over the course of the conference.
That's great. Thank you very much for having me, Kyle.
No problem.
CoinTalk is an independently owned and operated cryptocurrency show recorded in the heart of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We are proud to be part of the Bitcoin revolution. If you'd like to be on the show or have a question or comment, feel free to email kyle@cointalk.ca. Up next, we've got Stephanie Murphy, the co-host of Let's Talk Bitcoin.
So I'm here with Stephanie Murphy from Let's Talk Bitcoin. I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. I was mentioning to Adam that I kind of found you guys first, or you guys found me, I guess, if you want to talk about it that way. But I was discovered the show. I've been listening to the show ever since. I actually had two 8-hour drives from Toronto to Sault Ste. Marie. And you guys kept me company the whole way there and back. So.
Oh, that's a lot of Let's Talk Bitcoin.
It was a lot of Let's Talk Bitcoin. I almost know the catchphrases off heart now.
Hi, this is Adam B. Levine.
Yeah, exactly. His voice haunts me. So before we get too deep, I wanted to find out how you got involved in the Bitcoin movement. For those who were introduced to you for the first time via this show, how long have you been Bitcoining?
I've been an old school Bitcoiner. I got interested in Bitcoin in 2011. Okay. I'm a host of a radio show called Free Talk Live, and Free Talk Live found out about Bitcoin from Gavin Andreessen, actually. He's a fan of their show, and he took the main hosts of that show, Ian and Mark, out to lunch back in 2011 when he was running the Bitcoin faucet that was giving away 5 Bitcoins for free, if you'd go to the website. Mm-hmm. And he took them out and said, look, there's this new technology, it's really cool, you got to get on board with it. And so they did, they saw the value in it, and I heard about it at that point, and I was interested, and so I was like, I'll keep my eye on this. And then Roger Ver, who is known as Bitcoin Jesus, yes. He gave each of the hosts some Bitcoins of Free Talk Live. He gave them physical Casacious tokens.
Oh, okay.
So that was my first Bitcoins that I ever received from Roger. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was hooked.
What was the value at that point for the Bitcoin?
It was 25 Bitcoins.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I still have it.
That's excellent. I was going to ask the value of the dollar, but I won't now. That's excellent.
How much were Bitcoins at the time?
Yeah.
They were like around, I think they were around $1, I want to say.
Wow. Yeah, so.
Or like less than $2. And I was like, at the time, I was like, wow, that's really nice. That's really generous. And then it was the gift that kept on giving.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that. So fast forward until now. I mean, we're here at the Las Vegas convention. This is my first convention that I've been to. The energy here seems to be incredible. I've really been uplifted, and I'm very excited to see that there's so much momentum in the space. I was going to ask, what were you impressed about the show to see, and who are you looking forward to seeing more from?
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't been here very long because I had a flight delay, so I kind of just arrived, so I haven't seen much about it. I was a little disappointed to hear, from what I heard from other people, there were a lot of talks about, well, how can we comply with these government regulations about Bitcoin, and I was, disappointed to see that because I don't think that's really what Bitcoin's about. I would like to see more of how we can be free with our Bitcoin use, but I hear, there's some talks coming up today that look like they're going to be more freedom oriented. So I'm excited to see those. How
do you think that the regulatory bodies are going to get involved? Because I'm kind of an anti-capitalist or anti-establishment kind of guy. I'd like to see a world where the people who are running government or the people who are running essential services for the people are running those services because the people are supporting them. I'm worried that we've got a big, heavy government that's going to try and stop Bitcoin wherever it can. How do you see moving forward that compromise or?
I think they're going to try to put pressure, at least in the U.S. I think the U.S. is probably going to try to put pressure on the centralized points, so like the exchanges, especially, and they already have. But they're going to get left behind, frankly, because other parts of the world are not going to be doing that. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Companies are just going to leave the environments where it's not favorable for them to operate. So if the U.S. tries to crack down on Bitcoin, the Bitcoin companies are just going to leave. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. Or even the Bitcoin users, the people who really see the value and vision in Bitcoin are just going to take off. So,
How do you see the landscape in a year? For me, having come into the market relatively new, it seems like it's already bustling and moving, but we don't have mass market acceptance. I don't even think that more than, let's say, 5% of the world even is really considering Bitcoin seriously. I think at some point the tipping point will take place, but I'm curious how long you think that is. Is this a 6 months thing? Is this a year thing?
It all seems to be moving so fast. I mean, I just compare right now to 1 year ago. 1 year ago, Bitcoins were about $10. Now they're around closer to 1,000. Almost nobody knew about Bitcoin. There were still a lot of people, even in the sort of like libertarian world where I kind of run in. There were people who were really skeptical of Bitcoin and were saying, "Oh, buy gold. It's never going to last. This Bitcoin thing is just a scam," because they didn't understand it. And now, look where we're at. We've got mainstream news coverage. We've got people all over the world getting interested in Bitcoins. The price is reflecting all that interest. There's a lot more that you can do with Bitcoins compared to a year ago. There are a lot more things you can buy with them. There are a lot more services, and there are even protocols being built on top of Bitcoin, a lot more altcoins. So a year from now, I just see the exponential growth kind of continuing. I think we're going to be, sure, I'll throw a number out. I'll say $10,000 Bitcoins at least a year from now. And just mainstream companies coming on board and saying, yeah, you can pay with Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm trying to get involved in whatever ways I can.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to talk about with you is Bitcoins, not bombs, because I think that there's something with this movement. There seems to be a proactive, healthy desire to want to make things better, and I think that that's what you're trying to do. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, not bombs is a launching pad for Bitcoin nonprofit and charitable organizations, or I don't know. I guess if you're like certain strain of philosophical thoughts, you might say like solidarity. They support solidarity with people who need help, and they've supported Sean's Outpost. They've supported antiwar.com and Free Aid. Free Aid is FR33AID. That's a Bitcoin-based first aid kind of organization that I work with. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Bitcoin Not Bombs has been great. They have a project called Hoodie the Homeless where they've collected Bitcoin donations. Mm-hmm. And for every donation, they will give the person a hooded sweatshirt which has a Bitcoin graphic on it. And then they also give the same hoodie to a person who is homeless and needs a hoodie. Yeah, in terms of just Bitcoin charity in general, I had a lot of people in the community. You're totally right. They just want to help so badly. I had a lot of people asking me like how they could contribute to the relief efforts in the Philippines with Bitcoin, and so Free Aid had a project to do that, and a couple other Bitcoin charities also did. And Sean's Outpost has just been phenomenal with what they've been doing. They bought Satoshi Forest, paying the mortgage with Bitcoin on that land, and they have people who are able to stay there if they need a place to stay. So it's just incredible, and I hope we see more mainstream charities coming on board. Unfortunately, that hasn't really been the case just yet, and I think there might be a reason for it. They're scared, because they have to comply with certain rules to keep their government-recognized nonprofit status. So they're like, well, how do I do the accounting with Bitcoin? And they're kind of unsure about that. But then again, there's also a tremendous potential for transparency with Bitcoin charities, because people can see where their transactions are going and what their balance is in the blockchain. And not only that, but there's a potential for savings and growth of the charity's capital to be able to do more with it. Mm-hmm. So right now, Bitcoins are behaving as though, if you hold on to them, they're going to be worth more in the future. So if you receive a Bitcoin donation today of, $1 million a bit, that might not seem like too much at the time, but if you hold on to it for a year, you might be able to, do 100 times more with it. Mm-hmm. As a charity. So I think that has just enormous potential to help a lot of people. And I'm excited about the Bitcoin charity space. There's also the BitGive Foundation that that's affiliated with BitPay, I believe. I got to talk to Connie Gillespie about that. But there's a lot of Bitcoin charities coming out, and I hope there's more. And people are very generous, so it goes well. Like there's this great, not only charitable donations, but there's also a great tip culture with Bitcoin. When people make content on blogs and stuff, a lot of the early Bitcoin adopters are very enthusiastic about tipping, and that's something you just don't see with fiat currency because it's so cumbersome to do that.
Yeah.
You can't just send someone $2 by PayPal. PayPal's going to eat away at, it turns out to be like 20% of that. So
yeah, it's such a strange paradigm that you can actually tip, and the amount that you've tipped you'll make up in the deflation, and they'll actually get an increase because of the deflation as well. So it's actually kind of it almost encourages goodwill in a sense, and I think that's a profound kind of idea.
Yeah, it's definitely something we've never experienced before. And Bitcoin charities and also people who just work for Bitcoin are figuring out how to navigate the properties of Bitcoin. I mean, there's also, I guess, potential for fraud because you got to be careful. If you're a charity, you don't want to get your Bitcoin stolen or hacked or anything like that. So you have to be careful. But people like to hold charities accountable and to help them out if they need help with stuff like security. So people have just been wonderful with Free Aid helping us do secure storage of our funds with our Bitcoin funds. So just the community, as I see it, is passionate, excited, and generous, and helpful, and just awesome.
So one of the interesting things that I've found is that in my niche, I've been trying to get all of my friends and social circles to get involved with Bitcoin, and I always get the same answer. It's, well, tell me when I can buy something with Bitcoin. And I laugh that off. I say, well, if you said that about the internet, you'd be left in the dust. This is something new and exciting, but anybody that I can get on board in my local area, I've been trying to do so that means friends and family. I'm curious, back in your hometown, how have things been going? How are people that knew you pre-Bitcoin dealing with your Bitcoin-ness now?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So I live in a libertarian bubble. I live in New Hampshire, and 8 years ago I moved there because I was interested in the Free State Project. And the Free State Project, if anyone's not familiar, is this idea where a bunch of people who are interested in freedom and liberty are going to move to the same place, and that's New Hampshire, and create kind of a community and get active for more freedom in our lifetimes. So I thought, yeah, that sounds good. Sign me up, and I moved to New Hampshire. And so being there when Bitcoin was on the rise was really interesting because a lot of these people were also, basically like into technology. They're technologically savvy. They're early adopters. They're trendsetters. They like to find out about things before they're cool. And they're entrepreneurs, and so they have businesses and sell stuff. And so it was so cool to see the Free State Project kind of community embracing Bitcoin really early. Like this started around 2011, early 2012. People were selling things for Bitcoin. There was my good friend George Mandrick has a business where he sells baklava on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he started accepting Bitcoin in his baklava business in 2011, and he sold his first pan of baklava for 14 Bitcoins.
Oh, wow. It's expensive.
That's some
baklava.
good
Yeah.
baklava.
Yeah. I'm Yugoslavian, so I don't know if I'd pay 14 Bitcoins, but in the time, that must have been great.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the first, I bet it kind of gave him a boost because it was one of the only things you could buy with Bitcoin at the time. But, you need people to jump on board, and then it becomes more and more mainstream, and it gains steam, and more merchants start accepting Bitcoin. So I thought that was really cool of him, and it obviously paid off because now he's got those Bitcoins, the ones that he held on to, and they've been appreciating over time. So that was just kind of an example that I saw, and there were a lot of other businesses from people who I knew sort of in the community that started accepting Bitcoin early on and that were excited about it. And I started, I was accepting Bitcoin for tips on my blog and on, the podcast that I was a part of, and that was cool. It was really great. I managed to accumulate some Bitcoins in a wallet that I had, and at the time, the Bitcoin QT client was like the only client that was out there. There was no Electrum, there was no Multibit, there was no Armory. It was just the Bitcoin QT client. So everyone was running it. It took a while to download the blockchain, even then. And everyone was saying, you got to encrypt it so nobody can steal your Bitcoin. So I said, okay. I encrypted it, and I encrypted it too well because I ended up forgetting the password.
Brutal.
But years later, just a couple of months ago, I was able to recover it, actually, with the help of a very, very kind hacker named Dave Bitcoin at Wallet Recovery Services. So, yeah, like I had the adventures that early Bitcoin people have. I had the adventure where I lost some Bitcoins, and then years later, in a brilliant moment, was able to recover them. Yeah. I had the experience of buying stuff with Bitcoin when they were $2, $5, $10, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to have been a part of it from so early on, and I will remember the roots of Bitcoin, which I think has a lot to do with human freedom and liberty and technology advancing so that we can all have better lives.
I'm with you. I dig it.
Cool.
So for people who are being introduced for the first time, how do people get in touch with you, or how do people find you?
Oh, okay. So you can go to letstalkbitcoin.com, and I'm a host of Let's Talk Bitcoin, and that comes out twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm at, this is all complicated, but at S_Murphy_PhD on Twitter. Okay.
I'll put it up on the screen. So
cool.
Okay. Yeah. That's one of the benefits of video. So.
And I actually, people may not know this, but I am, my work is as a freelance voiceover artist. So I do a lot of work for Bitcoin. So if you need a voiceover, if you are doing a Bitcoin explainer video or audiobook or whatever, especially if it's about Bitcoin, I always offer a discount when people pay in Bitcoin. And my voice website is smvoice.info.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We'll catch up over the course of the conference. It was a pleasure.
That was fun.
Cheers. So I want to take a second to thank everybody that came on the show, and I want to give a special thanks to Adam B. Levine for including us in the pilot contest. If you like us, vote for us. We're called CoinTalk. You can also find out more information about us on YouTube by searching for CoinTalk or visiting cointalk.ca. That's it for now. Until next time, I'm Kyle Kerbegovich. Good luck out there.
If you enjoyed the show you just listened to, visit letstalkbitcoin.com/contest and send 0.1 millibit or 0.0001 Bitcoin to the address indicated for that show. Thanks for helping.